I am a 28 years old female was named after a really obscure character from Greek mythology. My preferred nickname is taken from the end of my name. I always introduce myself with I'm my name, but you can call me nickname. None of my co-workers in the small business we work for have ever had a problem with this before, until Megan, the niece of Jeff, one of the two owners, was hired. Jeff and Dave co-own the business, but Dave does the actual day-to-day running of the business. I introduced myself and my nickname as usual, but she immediately said that Bessie, not the actual name, would be a better nickname because it comes from the beginning of my name and that she liked it better. I told her I really didn't like that nickname and wouldn't answer to it and asked her to please not call me Bessie, but she insisted that it was so much prettier and that I just needed to get used to it. For the next 2 months she tried to call me Bessie, but I completely ignored her whenever she addressed me that way. Even when I knew she really needed help with something. She would call my desk phone and say, "Hey, Bessie," I would reply, "You have the wrong number, there's no Bessie here," and hang up. She then tried to get some of the employees outside the office to start calling me Bessie, but I quickly shut that down. I usually finish my work early and help them with a lot of tedious little things that aren't part of my job description, and threatened to stop helping them unless they used my preferred nickname. Friday she decided she was going to get me to respond to Bessie no matter what. We have an open office design but are at opposite ends. She started calling out Bessie in a sing-song voiceover and over again to try and annoy me enough to respond. Other co-workers got annoyed, most telling her to stop and one Lisa telling me to just let her call me Bessie already. I refused and she kept calling out Bessie louder and louder, until Dave barged in. He'd been on a conference call with an important client and could hear her yelling from his office down the hall. He told her to be quiet and that if she called me Bessie one more time, he'd write her up and dock her pay. Later, Megan cornered me in the break room, called me in for getting her in trouble and called me Bessie again for good measure just as Dave was walking in to heat up his lunch. He gave her a stern look and said, "I warned you." Then he walked to HR to have her written up. Lisa is saying I'm the for never helping Megan and that, if I had been nicer or hadn't fought her so hard on the nickname, she probably would have given up on it a while ago, but because I made such a big deal out of it, it became a challenge. I met her 2 years ago when we worked together and quickly became very close. She helped me through the darkest times of my life. I was mid-split with an abusive ex when we met. And I helped her through some really tough and unimaginable things. There were lots of rumors at the time we were seeing each other and everyone assumed we were an item. But for the past 2 years our relationship has been purely platonic. She was my best friend and up until a few weeks back I don't think we'd even ever hugged. Fast forward to a week ago, she came over for dinner and wine. This is very common and normal. We had more than usual and she was over the limit so couldn't drive, so she stayed the night. We slept in the same bed but apart and no physical contact again. It was completely normal and just as expected. We somehow didn't get up and ended up staying in bed until 10 p.m. the next day just talking. Sometime during that evening she got upset about something going on in her life. I rubbed her back while telling her everything will be okay, and then we just cuddled. Probably the first bit of real physical contact between us, but nothing was sexual. Didn't feel weird and she went home and it was all okay. This last weekend we had a hiking holiday planned, where we'd be sleeping in her van. She has a converted Transit. It's one bed but we thought we'd be fine. First night it was freezing, ending up cuddling and spooning but again didn't feel sexual. Second night is where it all went a bit wrong. We drank a bit too much and the spoon ended up getting carried away. It seems to be a joint thing and before I knew it we were kissing and touching each other everywhere. It was a bit of a frenzy of this for about 15 minutes until we both stopped and realized what we just did. After this we spoke a little and asked if either of us regretted it. We both said we didn't but it was odd. She got upset and I told her it was okay. It didn't change anything and we could just draw a line under it. We woke up the next morning and it happened again. We didn't talk too much but then went for a walk and then just before we headed home we ended up all over each other again. We were completely naked but again stopped, cuddled and lay there. We both agreed it was a what happens in X, stays in X type event. It was a really long trip home, 6 hours plus. During this she would rest her head on my hand on lap ECT and it seemed very different to our usual dynamic. When we stopped at services for breaks we seemed to walk arm in arm, we kept kissing on and off but it seemed strangely normal. We arrived back at her home. She lives with her dad at the moment, but just before I left she kissed me again and thanked me for a wonderful weekend. The following day she came over to get some stuff I took home with me. We end up just cuddling, kissing, feeling and so on again, but she has dinner with a friend and we stop it there. She goes on her way. This should feel really weird and strange, but it felt completely normal and we both discussed it that it was so odd it felt normal. Yesterday she turned up unannounced at my place, which is not a normal thing, with coffee and donuts. We end up talking, cuddling, kissing again and then we end up talking about what this is, the big problem. Neither of us were sure. She got panicky and burst out in tears and left. She said she was really scared and her words were, "I think I will end up pushing you away and hurting you and I don't want to do that to you." I told her I would come and see her later and talk. I drove to her house but her ex was there, another slight issue. They broke up 6 years ago, stayed close friends. He is a lovely bloke but in his head he is certain they will get married and have children. She's had the conversation with him but he seems to shut it off. If he found out she was seeing anyone he would get extremely angry. But there's so much family history intertwined between the both it's really complicated. For that reason she has avoided seeing anyone in the past 6 years. The reason he turned up is she hadn't responded to him since the night we kissed. I went home when I saw his car and just said she could come to mine to chat later. She turned up, sad and very emotional. She explained she ran off because she is terrified of losing our friendship. I said let's just cut the romance out, draw a line under it and be friends again, but she seemed to not speak much when I said this. I asked if her ex was the issue. She said it was nothing to do with us but a whole other issue. But that was not impacting what was going on between us. We sat quietly, hugged and I tried to reassure it would be okay, and I wasn't going to start hating her for whatever reason. And I am completely fine with just being platonic friends again. We both agree and say whatever happens we stay friends and nobody gets hurt, but we will pull back from the more physical side. I woke up this morning really panicky. I have no idea where we are, where we stand, and absolutely terrified of losing our friendship. I don't know what to do or say. I felt sick to my stomach and can't eat at the thought of this. She is coming around later to collect some of her clothes she left last night, and I am thinking I need a plan of what to say / do. I cannot lose my best friend. She is absolutely everything to me, but I am worried we crossed a line and there's only one eventual outcome which won't be good. I'm at the gym today and I'm walking towards an empty squat rack. 10 feet in front of, and 1 foot to the right of my rack is another rack that a girl Belinda is doing squats on. While walking up I briefly noticed that her leggings are see-through, and when she bends down in her squats you can easily tell she's also not wearing underwear. That's not my business, that's her choice. But it made me uncomfortable to take a rack that was kinda behind her. I had been waiting my entire gym session for one of these racks to open up, and this was my last lift before leaving. So I went ahead and took it. I went through my workout as normal. After every set I check my phone for 5 to 20 seconds. I track every single set for every single lift in a spreadsheet to note how much I lifted and for how many reps. Sometimes I need to remind myself what I did last week to make sure I'm progressing. Sometimes I'm just checking the time. Sometimes I'm changing the song on my Spotify. Tonight specifically, there was a very important basketball game being played, so I wanted to keep up with the score. So I use my phone a lot at the gym. I finished my 3rd set when Belinda turns around and walks up to me, with her phone up yelling, "What the are you doing?" Perv stop pictures of me. I'm caught completely off guard, but I explain that I'm just taking notes on what I'm lifting. That I'm not paying attention to her at all. She's being extra loud so other people are looking at me, plus she's recording me, and she demands I go through my pics / vids to show her what I was recording, and I delete the ones I took of her. I try to again explain I didn't record anything of her at all. She's yelling that if I have nothing to hide I should have no problem showing her, so I insist on going to gym management. Once at the front we both explain our stories. She's still recording. The normal gym attendee asks me if I'm willing to show her, a neutral third party, my pics /vids. She also says if I have nothing to hide it's not a big deal and we can squash it right now. I refuse. I have my own uncensored pics in there plus those of my GF. I'm not gonna let anyone force me to show them for some bullshit. I do show her my spreadsheet which shows it's been revised over 15 times in the past 50 minutes. So that proves what I was using my phone for. That was received well, but they still expected me to prove my innocence. I told them they need to review the cameras. Apparently only the manager has access to them, so I was told he'd call me before the end of the night, in about an hour. My GF tells me I should have just let them look at my phone because she doesn't mind and it would have cleared this all up. But I mind. I get that someone wouldn't want someone taking pics of them. But violating my privacy to prove I wasn't taking pics of you crosses a line for me. Just talked to the manager. He checked the footage. He couldn't see what was on my screen in the footage. But he said it looks like I had my phone pointed towards the ground right in front of me the whole time. In his opinion, not high enough to even take a pic of her, and never angled in her direction. Apparently I was gonna get banned from the gym if the cameras didn't absolve me. And also I'm not the first person that has been accused by Brenda, but she legit had a creeper before. Usually for Thanksgiving, we head out to go see family. Someone else always hosts. We typically help sponsor the host by paying for cleanup, etc. Our home is just too small to host the 30+ folks who typically show up through the day. This year that's obviously not happening. Other than us talking about not doing the usual, Thanksgiving didn't come up until yesterday. My kids have the week off from online school. And I was doing a puzzle with them before dinner when my husband walks in after work and says, "So did we get a turkey?" I looked at him and said, "Well, I know I didn't." "Did you?" He stared at me blankly and said, "No." "What do you mean? Do we need to get one still? Is it being delivered?" I shrugged and said, "I don't know nothing about no turkey." The kids and he looked so confused, so I helped them along and said, "I didn't buy anything. I didn't plan anything. No one said anything to me about Thanksgiving. Nobody offered to help meal plan, cook anything, do anything." He blew up yelling at me about how I should have obviously known. I said, "Why? I've literally never planned or made a Thanksgiving dinner in my life. The most I've ever done was help clean up or maybe peel the potato." I asked him why didn't he plan anything, why didn't the kids plan anything? Why is everyone waiting until the last minute and dumping it on me? He just sputtered and yelled and stormed off to his office and left me with the kids. We all had dinner, the kids cleaned up, and I was relaxing with some wine and a book after they all went to bed. My husband tore into me about how he can't believe I left this all to the last minute. Now there will be no Thanksgiving. How could I be heartbroken to do this to the kids, etc. So I just looked at him and said, "Why didn't you plan? Why did you wait to the last minute to ask me?" He told me I was being a for no reason and stomped off to go sleep in his office. He left without saying a word this morning. I followed up with my kids and asked them if they wanted Thanksgiving. They said they didn't care because the food isn't that good most of the time anyway. I work as well. We split chores but there's no hard line. I do some, he does some. We both cook, and the oldest cooks as well. I just don't get why Thanksgiving is on my plate. Why, just because I'm a woman? A lot of people seem to think that my kids are like toddlers or something. They're old enough to help make the menu for dinners, help with cooking, etc. Anyway, I told my husband that if he wants to do some traditional Thanksgiving with all the fattening, carby, salty, beige food, he can go ahead and plan it and I'll help in the same capacity as always. If he wants me and the kids to cook something together, aka a normal, average Thursday, I'll continue with what was scheduled. The kids genuinely do not care. Thanksgiving doesn't mean anything to them. One of them has been asking for us to stay home for years. One of them barely touches the food as it, and the other one only likes to go so she can see her cousins. And she sees them all the time anyway. The middle kid already dug out another puzzle for us and they're just happy they're off school. Also, we don't do Christmas.